But first, I wanted to introduce you guys. We have a guest via Skype, and he's the creator of an iOS game called Blindfold Racer, which has been pretty popular in the in our community, and he's going to talk to us about what kind of prompted the development of this game and what he dealt with in developing it. And yep. Marty?
I'll just jump right in. Okay. Hi, I'm Marty Schultz. I'm a software entrepreneur and also a developer. And I got involved with doing some of this stuff because I was teaching an app class for the students in my daughter's grade in middle school. She's about 13 years old now. And I had a good idea for an app at the time, and I decided I needed some kids' feedback. So instead of actually just building the app and then testing with kids, I had the kids be part of the process. And in doing so, we ended up making a birthday wish list app because I saw my daughter, for example, making up her wish list for what she wanted, and she would redo it, redo it, redo it, and I said there should be an app for that. It was a fairly fun thing to do, and a bunch of kids use it. Then the kids said, we want to do another app, this time we want to do a game. And I said, okay, go off, tell me what kind of game you want to do, and then we'll figure out how to build it. So we were meeting about once a week, and about a month later they came back and they did not have any creative idea for a game. The games they came up with looked like a million other games in the App Store. They were all kind of silly and irrelevant. So I said, if we're going to build a game, let's do something significantly different. Let's figure out how to build a game, but not have to deal with the screen, because if we have to do something with the screen itself, we're going to end up having to hire graphic artists and do a lot more work than we'd otherwise do. Let's do something with the screen blank. And I said, why don't we do a driving game for blind people? And of course the kids looked at me like I was nuts. So imagine this. In your ears you'll hear the fence, which will be music. And then when you get too close to the left fence by turning the iPad to the left, you'll hear the music will get louder. If you get too close to the right fence, then the music in the right ear will get louder. So we started building that up. And then we started making some tracks for that. We found out, yes, you can actually drive just using your ears, and the screen was completely blank. But it got boring, so we said, well, let's start putting some animal in the middle of the road to avoid. So first we put a chicken in the road. You hear the chicken go clucking, and you try to avoid running over the chicken. Then we put in a couple of cows and some dogs. We found lots of animals making unique noises. And that got us to about level 10, about 10 levels in the game. They said, this is getting boring. Let's start adding some puzzles in the game. So for example, you can win something in one level that you have to use in the next level. So we added, I think, we put a brick wall in the middle of one level that was infinite, that was very, very high. Of course, it's all in your mind. And then in the prior level, you win a jetpack. So you get the jetpack, you use it to get over the wall by tapping the screen at the right time, and then you continue playing. And then we did a couple more levels. We have to do sharp left and right turns. And then we said, okay, let's start having some more logic in here with a couple logic puzzles, where you'd have to get some food to feed the troll. If you don't feed the troll, then the troll will eat your car. We said, okay, what kind of foods make noise? And the kids came up with lots of suggestions, such as potato chips. But I said, most of those make noise when you eat them. I want some food that makes noise by itself. And we pretty much narrowed it down to things like popcorn, which you're popping, or soda. You hear the fizz when you open the soda can, and then you hear it pouring into a glass. So that's what you have to get for the troll, the troll. And then on and on, you kept adding more and more levels, using some logic puzzles. One of them, you hear lots of musical instruments, but you have to aim only for the banjos. Or you have to collect all three bells. You have to collect 3 different musical instruments: bells, drums, and a trumpet or something like that. By the time we got up to about level 20, I said, I've been testing this now with sighted kids. For 6 months, we built out this great game. I wonder how people with visual impairments will react. We were kind of nervous because we had put all this time into this. I thought it would just be a complete flop. So we had a contact over at the Lighthouse for the Blind in Miami. We went there on a Saturday when they had a bunch of keen gamers in, and I set up about 15 iPads, and we started playing the game, and they absolutely loved it. It was quite a hit. The smiles on these kids' faces were just amazing. One of the girls, she was a 16-year-old teen, and she said, I just can't wait to play against my sighted friends. I'm so beat them. So the next thing we did, I started interviewing some of the kids about what they thought about it, and they all had some suggestions on how to improve the game, make more levels. And one of the kids brought up the fact, they said, is the screen dark? completely black. And I think the kid could see shades of light, but he couldn't see much more than that. And I said, yes. He said, well, sighted people think their iPad is broken if you don't have anything on the screen. If the screen is black. So I said, okay, well, that's probably true. So we went back, and I had some kids in the elementary school do some cartoons that would appear at the first few, while you're playing the tutorial lasts about 90 seconds, so you at least see something on the screen, and then when you're actually playing the game, if you're sighted, you can see the buttons in the four corners, and the buttons are things like move up a level, move down a level, or go back to the main menu, as well as anytime you hit something or you either score a point or you mess up, a little icon pops up. So these sighted people are less bored when they play, and you have to make things much clearer for sighted people than for people with visual impairments. What I learned in the process of building this game is that people who are sighted have a much smaller auditory cortex and a much larger visual cortex. And people who have visual impairments have a much larger auditory cortex. What that means is you can listen and understand things, whereas sighted people, if you tell them something verbally, they don't get it. If you repeat it 5 times, they still don't get it. If you don't have things on the screen that says the same thing that you're telling them, they don't listen and they don't understand. And we've actually had to modify the game a little bit in the tutorial to shift for sighted people so they can at least see what they're supposed to do because they don't pay attention to instructions. Over time, we released the game, I think, in about February or March of this year. It jumped to the top of the Applebee's downloads that month, but they said it was the best game that month so far. And then I had 15 or so gamers I've been working with and coming out with new versions, and we made a lot of changes that they suggested, making the app work along with some of the voiceover facilities of the iPhone and the iPad. Previously would emulate a lot of that stuff. So, but now there's a setting screen where you can go, and you can tell almost everything about the car you're driving, the sounds it makes, what the engine sounds like, how quickly it turns. Anything you want is configurable on the app. And we've added probably, I think the game that's in the store has about 40 levels, and we're just coming out with a new level pack that has about 35 more levels. People are asking for both types of more level packs for us to do. One is of just roads that have different animals or different things to solve on that road, and another one is just for logic puzzles, where you have to more use your brain to figure out what's going on than necessarily just driving. But in general, you drive by, let's say, where you use a steering wheel, turn left, turn right. One of the things we learned early on is that there are some things that I took for granted as a sighted person, other sighted people take for granted, that I realized people with visual impairments didn't understand, which is how to honk a horn. What I kind of learned was that kids learn how to honk their horn if they're sighted by watching their parents in the car. One of the levels has you honk the horn to scare away the dog off the road. Well, I got so many emails from blind gamers not knowing how to honk the horn because they never saw their parents do it. And I figured, okay, I told them how to do it. We changed that in the game a little. And I said, well, for the next version of the game, I'm going to put in some levels of the game that are easier for blind people to do than for sighted people, because I want to keep it up a level. One of the new levels that we'll add in the puzzle version is what floor the elevator is on. So you'll hear the elevator go up and go down and go up and go down, and have to keep track. That's showing how we're moving ahead of the game. Now, when I was up with the Carroll School, I went to Carroll School up in Boston about a month or two ago, and they suggested there were a couple more games in this Blindfold series. And the Blindfold series is we're building games that are equally accessible to people who are visually impaired and people who are sighted, and we don't give the sighted people any advantage. So one of the women there, Judy Dixon, who works with the Accessibility Library of Congress, she suggested doing a blind Sudoku game. Any people in the audience that play Sudoku at all?
I know about it, but it's hard to play.
Well, we came up, Judy and I are just finishing up a blind Sudoku. It should be in the App Store in about a week or two, and it's designed for rapid audio play. It starts with a 9x9 grid, but we'll also do easier versions like 6x6 and 4x4 and 5x5, and kind of work on the complexity. The other one we're working on is a blind cryptogram game, where you take common sayings or quotes by famous people. It substitutes all the letters in there, where each letter corresponds to another letter in the alphabet, and you have to kind of de-scramble and figure out, okay, if I see the letter E there, the letter E is really the letter A, and that's how I decrypt the saying. But we're trying to get these to be fast audio playing games where everything's done through gestures and you see nothing on the screen, so you really have to build it up in your head. Another set of games we're building is, have any of you guys heard of the game Frogger?
Yes.
Yay!
So Frogger is a game where you have to move around on the screen and always kind of jump from one area that's adjacent to the next area, and you kind of have to cross a river. We're going to do the same thing like that with the sound environment, where you'll hear sounds, and when two sounds line up in your head, you'll move ahead, you'll move either ahead or back or sideways to cross a river or a crowded road or something like that. And we're working a lot on both what is feasible to do in a three-dimensional sound space, as well as making sure the overall sound environment makes it fun. In Blindfold Racer, we made sure the sounds are very interesting. We have both sounds of lots of different types of music out there. Each level has different music. It might be reggae music, it might be classical, it might be country, it might be pop, a whole range of music. Every level has its own, and this was both to introduce younger kids to different styles of music, as well as make every level slightly more interesting than the previous. Blindfold Racer also has a lot of sound environment where if you're doing something, you'll hear what it's really like. At one point in Blindfold Racer, you have to cross some train tracks. So you have to time your crossing to when you hear the trains moving quickly from the left to the right of your head, or vice versa. In our Blindfold Frog that we're working on, you'll hear the sounds of the river, you'll hear sounds of traffic, and you have to take all that into it. In Blindfold Racer, when you're at the higher level, you're following 7 or 8 different things going on at once, with your ears sitting in different parts of your head, whether it's directly left and right of you, or kind of in the center, or also left or right at an angle. There's a lot of audio engineering going on, and I've been collaborating with a number of blind gamers who are also audio engineers in making sure the games are sufficiently both entertaining and challenging. Kind of things in a nutshell. Do we want to open up for any questions or any areas, Sherry, you think I haven't talked about that would be of interest to this crowd?
Why don't we ask if there are any questions?
Yeah, are there any questions in the audience?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm just curious if you can show a demo of the game. I'm very curious how it looks like.
Yep, we'll be doing that shortly.
Yeah, it's pretty much very boring. I mean, the screen has enough activity to keep a sighted person entertained, but everything is going on in your head. This is the game where you're playing in your head. You don't play on the screen. And all the games that we have that will be coming out in the Blindfold series, you play in your head. The screen might have some extra information on it, but it's never enough to make it easier for a sighted person than a visually impaired person.
There's a question in the front.
Yes.
Is there multiplayer, like over games, and like head-to-head against a friend or anything, or no?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the question.
The question was, Marty, if there's a possibility for multiplayer, like challenge games where you can play against people?
We'll do that. I mean, people thought we should do that with Blindfold Racer, but I wanted to kind of get the game to be popular first. But, and we're probably going to do some things in Game Center just to keep beating the scores.
Yeah.
Doing multiplayer, 2 or 3 player, that requires a little bit different types of technology, but it's something we're looking at for the future. Maybe like a racing game where you have to go around the curve. There'll be a lot of curves back and forth. You can steer and speed up and slow down and play against 1 or 2 people. Is that something you guys would be interested in?
I do this in that.
Yeah, I'd say it sounds like there's some general consensus that that would be interesting, yes.
Okay. Would it be a racing, would you like a general racing, or would you want other things on the track? What kind of environment do you want?
Like obstacles.
I would say general racing, but maybe like more levels, so like you can pick what track you want.
Okay.
So
somebody else said obstacles.
Yeah, Marty, somebody also said having obstacles would be very good.
Okay. Yeah. I'll take a look at it. It's interesting. How many people in the audience are sighted? Okay. What's interesting is when you're playing this type of game.
About 8.
8 people out of like maybe just a little bit less than half, I would say.
Okay, what's interesting when you're playing this type of game is you can only really hear what's to the left and right of you. Looking straight ahead, you don't really know what's out there unless you hear something. So imagine it's like driving through a maze. The walls are very tall on either side, and you don't really know how the track is going to be, 20 or 30 or 40 feet ahead of you. You have to rely on how close you are to the left or right side. So when you start having more and more complex curves in the road, you really can't, as a player, you can't appreciate all the turns that you're going to be doing because you only hit them when you come up to them. And you have no real spatial reference that there's a left and a right and a left up ahead if you were looking down at the game, as opposed to simply turning the wheel and go through a maze, or like going through cornfields in Iowa where the corn is 20 feet high, 10 feet, 15 feet higher than the car, and you can't see anything but the sides of the road. So we will do something like that, but again, the shape of the road is going to be less interesting than the fact of probably competing with other players and hearing them come up from behind you and pass you. We're working with some concepts of 3D sound to get that type of effect.
Another question in the front.
Is Blindfold Racer, is it free or?
Blindfold Racer is free. I think you get like 20 or 30 levels for free. And then we're starting to do some add-on packs for like $2 or $3 of more levels. But the basic game is free.
Okay.
I have a question here.
Yes.
Hello?
Yep, we're waiting for the question.
I'm just curious if you have games that for both for the deaf and for the blind as well?
I haven't dived into the deaf issues at all. The issue there is it's not overly complex to build a game and live within an audio world.
I'm sorry, interpreter's error in regards to the deaf and the blind, not just the blind. For an individual who cannot see and cannot hear as well.
No, I would have
they can't play the game.
Yeah, I would have no clue. The other thing is a lot of things, Blindfold Racer, you need to have hearing in both ears. Now, you don't need to have perfect hearing in both ears. If you can't do a bunch of frequencies, you can actually tailor the game to operate on different frequencies for some of the bell sounds and things like that. I encountered that where I actually had the game tested at the VA Med Center in Miami with some blind veterans, and they had some hearing difficulties, so we made that customizable. But when you're dealing with, but you at least with Blindfold Racer, since you have to locate yourself in a 2D or 3D world, you need to work off both ears. As far as games for deaf and blind, I haven't thought about it at all, and I probably have to work with some experts in that.
You really should think about it, yes, definitely.
There's a question over here on the left.
Yes.
Yeah. Have you ever explored any other methods of control, like using, like say if you used a PlayStation controller to control it, say, and you like move to the side of the road and the controller vibrated, like using touch to control a game? Like, have you explored any of those options?
Well, right now I'm restricting the games I'm doing only to the iOS platform. But for example, when you bump into something, your iPhone will vibrate. So I haven't played with other types of controllers or looked at anything like kinetic technologies as ways of doing it. There is some gestures you do on the screen to control different things. I try to keep all the gestures the same amongst all the games we're building. But what I'm looking for is ways you can really manipulate the iPad or the iPhone in big, gross movements. What I heard back from a couple of blind gamers is they like things where the audio space is very realistic and there's a lot of physicality to the game. So we are doing a couple of logic games, like I mentioned, Sudoku and Cryptogram. But another game I'm looking at doing is a Frisbee type of game, where you'll again need headphones or earbuds in it. You'll hear a sound somewhere in front of you, to the left or right, at some distance, and then you'll snap your wrist like this in an attempt to like throw a Frisbee. And then that would send that object off in that direction, and you'd try to hit the target that would be somewhere out there, and hopefully you wouldn't let go of your phone as you're looking at the person's room.
Any other questions?
I got some.
Yes?
Yeah, my question is a three-part question. I have a laptop, and I used to have this old-fashioned steering wheel with pedals on it. So can I be able to use it in the laptop? Second, I have a tablet, and same question for that. And third, are you going to change like the weather, like day and night in the game, and possibly like snow and rain?
We will. I didn't catch. The third question.
So Marty, so the first two questions were whether or not the device would be this. Our audience member has an old-fashioned interface where there's like a steering wheel with like speed pedals and stuff like that, brake pedals. Would he be able to use this program on a PC?
No, it's only iOS.
Only iOS. So yeah.
We are thinking of it connecting in some switch technology. People with limited mobility use, but that's kind of far off because I don't have any switch technology here. I kind of asked for some donations from a couple companies, and I haven't heard back from them. But as far as external devices hooked up to an iPad, so probably not, because it's a completely different set of technologies to mix together. I'd rather kind of work on just using the device by itself so that's accessible to a lot more people. So I don't require them to go out and get, a special steering wheel or special brakes. So I know that's just available on the PC and on Xbox and things like that. But right now I'm kind of focusing on where I have a lot of programming background, which is the iOS, the iPhone and iPad platforms.
Would it work on the Android tablet? I have an Android 10-inch tablet.
Probably not. It's completely different code to build Android versus iPhone. Everybody I've talked to in my initial round of conversations told me to go aim towards the Apple products because it's like 5 to 1 of what people have who have visual impairments.
Well,
way more people have Apple than Android. And
I guess I luck out on everything.
and then there was the third question was
Weather.
Oh, whether or not you're going to be incorporating different weather or lighting conditions like daylight, nighttime.
We will,
into the game.
in the puzzle pack that we're working on, we will use environmental concepts to help you solve the puzzle. So since it knows where you are and hence can find out the weather from the web, and it knows what time of day it is, it knows what season it is, we will throw some of that stuff in. So if you play the game, you play the same level twice, the results on how to solve the level will be different.
So we'll be able to add in traffic from 3rd Avenue when we're playing the game?
I'll do my best.
Nice.
There's a question in the back?
Yes.
Yes.
Is there any talks or thoughts about creating quest games or first-person shooter type games? I don't know, I always had the dream of sort of like a Daredevil game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't figured out how to do that stuff yet. I'm only learning how to use a 3D sound package right now. Blindfold Racer with a 2D sound package. So basically you can hear anywhere between left and right, okay, but you can't tell the difference between in front of you or behind you. I'm working on kind of changing some of the technology there. And then once we do Frogger, that'll get more into the 3D space, and then by that time maybe we'll be at the point where we can say, let's do and between that and the Frisbee game, let's start looking at some first-person shooter games, because we'll have kind of built up more of a technology of how to use these audio libraries and how to keep the games exciting. And if any of you guys want to collaborate with me on this, I'd be more than glad to do it with the Blindfold Frogger-like game we're doing. I asked for, I think I've had 15 or 20 of the guys who are testing Blindfold Racer are contributing. So like once we dive full time into Blindfold Frogger, I'll be sending out a new release like once every 3 or 4 days and get the feedback and then modify and continue like that until we all think the game is good enough to go live. If you want to follow anything of what I've done, I've been blogging about this 2 to 3 times a week for about 1.5 years now, how I got started and all. The blog is stemmiami.wordpress.com.
Say that again?
STEM Miami, from STEM for something. The
Science
Technology,
Yeah.
Engineering.
Yes, STEM Miami, from Miami.wordpress.com.
Okay, great. Marty, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank-
And I'll be following up with you shortly, I promise.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.